Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. This would be the Jeff Cameron Show right here on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Good day, friends. I'm Jeff. That's Tom. We're online, ESPNTallahassee.com. Go there, listen live via the streaming free. Miss anything, we'll post all 3 hours of the program right there on iTunes, where you'll rate it 5 stars and tell all your friends about it and pass it along. Also, we have it on our own website, the Audio Vault. Email the show if you like, JCS at 979ESPNradio.com. And on Twitter, it's at J Cameron Show, WTSM app for mobile devices. Hello, YouTubers. Hope you're well. Periscopers, hope you're well, too. Florida State plays basketball tomorrow at noon. We'll have the post-game reaction, another Sterling edition of the Jeff Cameron Show on a Balls McWednesday, perhaps celebrating the Noles going to 21-10. Getting a 10th ACC win doesn't count in the schedule, but it would be nice. You know, it'd be good to see the record padded. But it's also nice to enter that game knowing you don't need it. Preview that momentarily. Let me just say this. Long, great segment coming up. Our man Charlie Campbell, WalterFootball.com, joins us every year 2 to 3 times. But this, the first one, is always the longest long form we do with him because it's post-Senior Bowl and it's post-Combine. He was at both. He's been talking with NFL scouts, GMs, player personnel guys throughout, and we'll get his thoughts on what he's seen, who's rising, who's falling, team needs within the state of Florida. We'll check in on the Bucs. We'll check in on the Dolphins and the Jags. Always a great segment. I look forward to talking with Charlie here momentarily. This will take you, this hour that is, all the way up to Seminole Headlines at 4 p.m. So a brief opening segment here where we'll talk some FSU basketball. Tom, Noles come back last night from down 5 runs. They finally fall back on their offense, and their offense comes through.
That's good.
In a big way. And so it's an exciting time in Tallahassee, man. We've got postseason basketball. We got the Noles keeping an undefeated streak alive to start the year. We got the upcoming NFL draft post-combine, all these things that we love as we gear towards the spring game. So it's a good week, man.
Yeah, a public service announcement for TV for tomorrow. The noon game is on ESPN proper. If it's not blacked out, because if it is blacked out, it'll be on Bounce TV. Let's hope that we have it in HD, everybody, on our televisions. But either way, we'll have it on the big board here and in HD using the ACC network.
Split the season series with Louisville, who will be the more desperate team. Each team won on the road. This will be the first time the two programs have met in a conference tournament since FSU's final season in the old Metro Conference. And the Noles rallied from an 11-point halftime deficit to beat the Cards by make that 7 that year. Way back in 1991, my man Doug Edwards dropping 18 points, I think it was. Charlie Ward had a good game, too. Those were the days, pal.
Oh, yeah.
Those were the days. That said, this game tomorrow, again, I think it's interesting. FSU had to find a different way to keep pace with Louisville in the second half of the second game that we won over the final 20 minutes of that game, which ended up being better shooting from the field, right? Something we have not seen an awful lot of from this team as of late.
Well, yeah, and in the first half, you needed to hit some improbable shots just to stay in the game because Louisville came out on fire. And it was everything, it had all the ingredients for the first 10 minutes or so. To where what you were talking about during the week looked like it might happen. We might get run out the gym. But somehow, some way, you're looking up at the clock and you're looking up at the score in the first half and you're saying, well, we're within a few points.
We're right here with it.
This is a couple possession game. And one of the biggest shots of the day to me was Brian Angola, turnaround 3 as their shot clock is running out by the bench. And that was emblematic of what we needed to do in the first half just to kind of hang in there. Thankfully, in this circumstance, you're playing at a neutral site and not on their court. But that's one of the signature wins of this season. At a time you really needed to have it, we went on the road and got the job done against Louisville. There is no doubt, though, tomorrow's game means more to Louisville given where they are in the bubble.
By the way, the ACC tournament has already begun. 12-seed BC having beaten number 13-seed Georgia Tech 87-77 in the noon game. They'll face number 5-seed NC State at 2:30 tomorrow afternoon. The second game between 10-seed Notre Dame and 15-seed Pitt tipping off right now, or just a few minutes ago anyhow, and nobody really cares about that sorry-ass game. They'll get an opportunity, will Notre Dame, to put Pitt out of their misery.
That's correct. Notre Dame will be playing tomorrow, and then tonight at 7 o'clock, you got Syracuse, Wake Forest. That game on either Bounce TV or ESPNU if we have the HD variety around town.
Yeah, by the way, the winner of our game facing Virginia at noon on Thursday, is that correct? Did I see that right?
Yeah, that is correct.
Of course, Virginia took care of us in Tallahassee with a 59-55 road win where they came back in the second half. And, of course, they also beat Louisville in one of the great thefts of all time, scoring 5 points with less than a second to play. That's right, 5 points with less than a second to play to win 67-66 and sweep Louisville on the year.
Also a great result for us heading into last weekend. That
Dumbest
was one
thing
that
I've ever seen.
we really needed that, and
Never
I'm glad
seen
it happened.
anything dumber. Throw it as far as you can throw it. What are you doing? This is
Throw
ridiculous.
the ball as high as you can.
That's right. Bob Knight screaming. You know what I've always thought was interesting? Yeah, you could do it that all day long. All right, Jeff Cameron Show. Charlie Campbell, WalterFootball.com joins us next. Stay tuned.
Why does Mahindra have 97% satisfaction? Ask our owners.
This gives me the ability to do what I want to do when I want to do it.
I decided on Mahindra just because of the sheer strength, the size, the ease of the workability, and it was more of a comfortable machine than the others.
You could lift just about anything with that thing. It has never let me down.
And now get the industry's best 7-year limited powertrain warranty on select models.
Sorry, boys, I did not have time to pack.
We got this.
It's right here, guys.
We got this.
I thought I could handle it.
We got this.
Moving doesn't have to be a hassle. Call us first at 2 Men on a Truck. No matter the move, home or business, we'll make it a smooth one.
I forgot something.
We got this.
When you're in need of auto repairs, look no further than Nice Tire and Auto Service. Nice has been in business for 16 years with long-term, knowledgeable sales associates. They have the latest wheel balancing machine in the industry. And for passenger vehicles, they service AC, brakes, suspension, tune-ups, and much more. Never sit through a long wait. Nice Tire and Auto has 10 service bays to get you back on the road quickly. If you have tire problems, check out their large inventory with various Goodyear and Michelin tires. Nice Tire and Auto Service, 4792 Bluntstown Highway, 574-4100.
I'm talking tough, like a state of mind. Tough like a soldier on the front line. Tough when it gets rough, like my Ford truck, always enough. I'm talking tough.
Franklin Spring Creek Ford, the place to find your next truck in southern Georgia.
I'm talking tough.
Hey y'all, we're Chris and Preston from Low Cash. Head to Franklin Spring Creek Ford and see them about all of your vehicle needs.
Free. Absolutely. It's free from the City of Tallahassee Utilities, our own utilities.
Sounds good to me. Let's save some money.
If you're a City of Tallahassee residential, electric, and natural gas customer, you can schedule a free energy audit. Call 891-4YOU. That's 891-4968. And schedule your free energy audit at a time most convenient for you. A message from the City of Tallahassee Utilities, your own utilities.
Don't just listen to The Jeff Cameron Show. Watch it live. The Jeff Cameron Show Streamcast. Live weekdays 3 to 6 p.m. Head to ESPNTallahassee.com today to watch live or catch up on demand. The Jeff Cameron Show Streamcast. Brought to you by Nice Tire and Auto, your trusted Goodyear dealer.
Nice Tire and Auto, just minutes away from FSU campus.
Yamaha Outboard, live and breathe life on the water. The Key to Reliability sales event is going on at Mike's Marine Supply in Panacea through March 31st. For a limited time, purchase a new select eligible 2.5 to 300 horsepower Yamaha Outboard and choose either 5 years of warranty protection or up to $1,500 in dealer credit. Mike's Marine Supply, the only full-line Yamaha dealer in this area. 1296 Coastal Highway, Panacea, Florida. Call them at 984-5637 or online at mikesmarineflorida.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's opponents on Man vs. Train. At the crossing, we have Rick, a 175-pound frustrated man who's running late for work. And on the tracks we have Bull, a million-pound freight train that takes a mile to stop. Let's see who comes out on top.
You can't beat a train, so don't try. Stop. Trains can't. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
You're locked in with the Jeff Cameron Show on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Welcome back, Jeff Cameron Show, 97.9 ESPN Radio. As we said before, it's an opportunity. This is the first of the year. We'll do several of these, at least 2 or 3, I would think. It's always fun to talk to my man Charlie Campbell, WalterFootball.com. Here we are with the NFL Combine and the upcoming NFL Draft, and we always want to know who's doing what, who's moving, who's shaking, who is hurting their stock, who is helping their stock. And we get a look at FSU guys, we look at the teams in the state, and we look at the draft on the whole. And we do it again with our friend Charlie Campbell, WalterFootball.com. Charlie, how are you, good sir?
I'm great. How you doing today, Jeff?
Doing great, man. Talking to you, talking football, talking the draft, talking the Combine. I know you were just at the Combine, right?
I was. Spent almost all of last week in Indianapolis, so it was a great week, and it was a good Combine. Went really smoothly, so it was well done.
You know, Charlie, we've had you on since back when you covered the Bucs exclusively, to your transition to Walter Football and covering the Combine and college and pro football, the NFL Draft, and I've enjoyed listening to you as you've learned the ins and outs of the process. What's changed the most about said process since you've come on board talking to NFL scouts and personnel about the Combine?
Well, I think in terms of what's really changed the most is in some ways kind of some of the parts of the Combine that weren't as important as they used to be have taken on more importance to certain teams in terms of the way the analytics have influenced certain teams, the Spark score, you know, putting together speed and athleticism and looking at things like the 3-cone and, you know, the vertical and broad jumps, you know, kind of all these other metrics that used to be not irrelevant, but just weren't as considered as heavily, have taken on more importance with the teams, say, like Seattle, that use more of the Spark score and the analytics for ranking players. And then you have other teams that are real old school, that really are all about the tape, and you know that's their big thing is how did this guy play in college. So it's really changed in terms of the kind of how it's being evaluated.
What would you say the split is from teams who look at advanced metrics and find them to be of greater importance than they used to, and those that are old school and continue to want to look at the tape as their means by which to judge a player?
Well, it's really changing because year by year, last year and the year before, the analytic approach was spreading and really starting to be considered more heavily. And now this year, we've seen some pushback against that, like, say, Cleveland, for example, that had gone heavy into the analytics the past few years. Now the GM, they've hired John Dorsey, and the guys he's brought over from Green Bay, like Alonzo Highsmith and Elliott Wolf, I mean, those guys are old school. John Gruden going back to the Raiders, he's old school. He's not into the analytics at all. So I think it's going to be kind of an evolving process, team by team, and teams are always looking to go to the other side when they're not winning. If the analytics weren't winning in Cleveland, they're going back to the old school approach. So it'll be interesting to see kind of if the analytics really grab a hold of the league the way they have in baseball, because they haven't at this point, and I'm not sure they really will. I think the old school football approach is still going to have a home for many years to come.
Yeah, I mean, I always feel like with analytics and advanced metrics, the key is it's just another tool. It's just another
Right.
tool, another means by which to judge, but not the only means by which to judge a player. So I think teams would be absolutely foolish not to use them and incorporate them, but it can't be the be-all, end-all. You do need to see whether or not a guy could play, and especially if you get a guy from a Power 5 conference who faced good competition. If he blows up game to game on tape and flashes, it doesn't really matter if he has the numbers at the combine. You saw him against great competition. You know he can play. And likewise, if you get a kid from a small school who didn't face great competition and he comes in the combine and absolutely wows you, he may be worth a longer look, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for example, this year, Calvin Ridley, the Alabama receiver, who's considered to be the consensus top receiver in this draft, ended up having like the worst SPARQ score of any receiver in this year's draft. So it definitely is a consideration, but it's not an end-all, be-all, because Ridley's still going to go in the first round. He's still going to have plenty of teams hoping to land him in the draft, and it's not going to drop him a huge amount.
Charlie, I noticed when we look big picture here on WalterFootball.com and we see some of the articles that have come out since the Combine started and concluded, everybody was absolutely wowed by Saquon Barkley. What are your thoughts on a guy who obviously at 6 foot 230, running that 40, doing the things that he did with the reps and the explosiveness, but he is still a running back? And, we've seen time and again, you just saw it the last couple of years, last year alone with Hunt, obviously, and who was it from the Saints?
Kamara.
Yeah, Kamara. Third-round guys.
Yeah, and, it's definitely kind of a position where if you're, say, a team like the Colts, if Saquon Barkley gets to their pick at 3 overall, obviously he's a great player, best player in the draft, but does it really make sense for them to take him? Because they could get a defensive player, fill a huge need that they have with like Bradley Chubb, and then get a really good running back in the second round like Darius Geis from LSU, or maybe Sonny Michel from Georgia gets there. It's a strong running back draft. So as a pair of picks, that's the team-building aspect of the draft that has to be considered. So, Barkley is an amazing talent. The guy's a freak athlete. Everyone across the league loves him and feels that he's, definitely elite, better than Ezekiel Elliott, on a par, maybe better than Leonard Fournette and Todd Gurley coming out as well. So he's definitely a generational player. But whether or not a team can take him and pass on a franchise quarterback or pass on a couple of players like that Colts example to make the overall team better, that's a tough decision that some of these teams will have to make.
Talking with Charlie Campbell, WalterFootball.com. I'm not in love with the quarterbacks in this draft, but of them, are you a Sam Darnold guy, a Josh Rosen guy? Who's your guy?
Well, I think Sam Darnold's probably the safest and the cleanest of them. I think that he, just in terms of what he can do under pressure with buying time and throwing accurately downfield, his intangibles, the work ethic, I think he's probably the safest prospect among that group. So if I had to pick one and make that my franchise guy and build around him, I would pick him. And now, otherwise, I think Josh Allen has kind of a risky pick. The accuracy issues scare me. Rosen, I would be a little bit nervous about in terms of the durability and also the fit in the locker room. And I think Lamar Jackson's being really undervalued, and I think he's being underrated. Anyone who's watched the ACC the past few years knows how dynamic this guy is. And yeah, he definitely needs some grooming with his feet for passing in the NFL, but Louisville's team was pretty bad, and he carried them on his back and made them competitive. So I think Lamar's being undervalued in all this, and I think for him, if he goes to a good team that can develop him slowly, that could end up being a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, that's the big thing, right? Is where you go, what kind of fit you are, and what's the timetable? How much time can they work with you? Because the NFL, is this partly, Charlie, because the NFL is changing and we're seeing teams incorporate more of these college offenses, and maybe not so much running the football with the quarterback, but certainly certain spread principles that we're seeing now. You saw Philadelphia, New England do that as well. That now it's no longer a death sentence for a guy coming out of college who maybe was non-traditional in the sense of what you expect him to do in the NFL. Now you're seeing these guys actually transition and have a shot. Is that why you say that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think last year with Houston is a great example of the possibilities. I mean, they were averaging like 39 points a game with Deshaun Watson until he had that knee injury in practice. But, they switched from the very pro-style offense, the same offense Tom Brady's running, to adding in a lot of the zone read and spread plays, and the mixture of the two worked really well. Defenses were on their heels. They were afraid to rush Deshaun, just full go after him because of his running ability, and that helped cover up how terrible the Texans' offensive line was. So teams are definitely becoming more open to these guys. And Pat Mahomes going in the top 10, people weren't projecting that. And so much at the end of that season and early after the season ended, everyone was saying, Mahomes' numbers and Texas Tech offense is, just a college spread system and, not legitimate. And he's looked pretty good in the limited action we've seen of him. So I definitely think the NFL minds are being opened up. And they didn't have a choice because it's taken over college football. So they had to adapt, and I think they're figuring it out.
Is Quentin Nelson still going to be around when the Bucs draft 7th? And my question is, beyond that, if he were, and say he or Minkah Fitzpatrick were on the board at the same exact time, would you take the guard or would you take the dynamic Minkah Fitzpatrick at safety?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think from speaking with people there with the Bucs, I think they would prefer Nelson as a player. But in terms of position for the team, that makes it a dicier debate because they had just terrible pass defense last year. The pass rush was awful. The coverage was an issue all year long. So, I mean, they have needs at either spot. I think the need on defense is bigger. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if they lean that way. I know they think the world of Nelson, and they think he's just out of this world in terms of a guard prospect. They think Fitzpatrick is very good. So I think that's going to be a tough decision for them. Right now, if they're both there, I think they would still lean to Nelson just because they have a higher grade on him. And you can never have enough good blocking for a franchise quarterback, and also reestablishing the run game, which they really lost the past couple of seasons.
Well, and Nelson, correct me if I'm wrong, checks all the boxes. I mean, you're talking about 6'5", 6'6", 330 pounds, strength, athleticism, gets to the second level, can pass protect. He's all of these things. I know you don't like to take a guard in the top 5, but it looks like some teams are looking at him to do that. He is as close to a can't miss in this draft, right, as there is?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if he doesn't stay, I was talking about it with people with the Bucs, and we, said if he stays healthy, he could be a perennial Pro Bowler for over 10 years, and you're talking about a potential Hall of Famer. So, that's the guideline for being a Hall of Famer. And so I think he has that kind of potential. And, I mean, just what he would do for them in the ground game and helping at the point of attack and really having someone that can open a hole and create some movement, which they really haven't had a beast of an offensive lineman in a long time, a guy that can just get a push and help get the line of scrimmage moving their direction. So I definitely think Nelson would have an immediate impact and help for the Bucks, and he's tremendous in pass protection. And they have to do a better job of protecting Jameis and giving him more time to throw and not having him under duress and getting injured. So you really can't go wrong with either of those two guys. But definitely, I think Nelson's the safest player in the draft.
Yeah, it's crazy to me that guy had a first-round grade last year, before last season, and that he was a guy that had he come out, he would have been a first-round pick before he chose to come back for his senior season. That's insane. What was he doing? That's nuts.
I know, it's crazy, but he may have paid off where he turned himself from a mid-first rounder into a top 10 pick. And Bradley Chubb, if he had come out a year ago, he may have been a mid to late first rounder, and now he's going to probably go in the top 5. So, there's something to be said for going back to school when these guys are physically more mature. They're going up against guys that are younger than them, that haven't been as developed. They aren't, these guys have more experience, time in the scheme. So they're putting together great tape at the best time possible. So I think going back to school is underrated in terms of what it can do for a player's draft stock.
Talking to Charlie Campbell, WalterFootball.com. Do you love Bradley Chubb? Because I don't, but I understand why people do. I'm not saying he's a bust. I'm just not in love with him where I see him projected in the top 5.
I think that if you had a real pure speed edge rusher in this draft, that guy would go ahead of him. If there was, say, a Von Miller or a Clowney or a Joey Bosa, or Myles Garrett last year.
Any of the last 5 defensive ends are better, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, I think he would be solidly number 2 in those draft classes behind those guys. I think you're on to something with him, Jeff, in terms of he's not a pure speed edge rusher. So that sack total he had at NC State of 10 the past 2 seasons might be a little bit smaller in the NFL. He might be more of an 8 or 9 sack per season kind of guy, and not quite as much pressure on the quarterback as he did at NC State going up against some weak offensive lines. So I could see his numbers being less in the NFL, but I think he'll be a sturdy base end that's going to put pressure on the quarterback and defend the run well and be a solid to good starter. So I agree he might not be elite, but this draft, he is one of the better prospects available. And
it's a crappy draft for ends. Let's just say it. It's not good. I mean, look, I like Harold Landry an awful lot, and the fact that I can't sit here and tell you that I'm not certain that he won't be better than Bradley Chubb kind of tells you that this is not as nearly as deep a draft, the defensive end, as we've had in the past. So I'm not saying they won't be good players. I'm not in love with it at that position. And therefore, I think you can tell I'm rooting for the Bucks to somehow take the guard and move from there. Let's stay in the state real quick. Well, because I always forget to do this because I'm selfish and I only care about the Bucks. But the Dolphins, I would imagine, would look defense here, and they've got a lot of options here, in particular at linebacker, or they could go offensive line.
Yeah, and I think that the offensive line, I would bet they fix in free agency. I would bet they do something at guard there because Nelson's not getting to their pick.
No way.
And I think they end up going defense with Roquan Smith, the Georgia linebacker, Tremaine Edmonds, the Virginia Tech linebacker, and either one fills a big need for them.
Yeah, and I think Roquan Smith really stood out this past year. He's fun to watch play, a very, very good player. What do you think Jacksonville does?
Well, they could use offensive line help. I'm not sure the value is really going to be there. I could see them looking at receiver as well, depending on if some of these guys slide. And tight end, I think if there's a tight end they like, that would make sense. Mercedes Lewis is aging, and they don't have much behind him. So a tight end would help them in terms of the ground game blocking if they got a guy like Hayden Hurst from South Carolina, and also as a receiver for Bortles. So I think that would make a lot of sense for them. And they defensively, I think they're pretty well set. They can use that pick on basically the best offensive player that falls there.
Yeah, they're on the verge of being, if those guys end up staying healthy, a pretty damn dominant team for some time. We'll see if it works out at quarterback. But everywhere else, they're pretty damn solid in Jacksonville.
Yeah, and obviously they want to take a running back. I should have prefaced that.
Well, sure, of course not. Yeah.
But yeah, offensive line, tight end, wide receiver, even quarterback. I think if a good quarterback slips to them, there's nothing wrong with taking the guy. And if Bortles somehow pans out, then you can trade him. And if
By the
Bortles
way,
doesn't,
I'm interrupting right here because I just love that. If he somehow pans out, as if a miracle occurs.
Right. Well, say they take Lamar Jackson or Baker Mayfield, and then Bortles plays really well. Well, then they can trade Mayfield or Jackson to a team next year, because it's doubtful that there's going to be a draft next year or the year after where there's going to be 5 first-round quarterbacks again. And there are going to be plenty of teams that need one. So if a good quarterback fell there and they like the guy, I wouldn't fault the Jags at all for taking him, and I think it could turn out to be a really smart move on their part.
Hey, that's somebody I need to ask you about, because the NFL is changing and quarterback is so intriguing, and we've seen non-traditional quarterbacks start to make it and have a real impact. What have you thought of what you've seen from Baker Mayfield?
He's a complicated evaluation because the Big 12 stinks. The defenses are awful. You see them putting up 50 points a game with little resistance, the receivers running wide open. So I think it's going to be a big transition for him in terms of the competition, the system, what he ran in college to what he's going to do in the NFL. Teams are going to force him to stay in the pocket. Georgia did that in the second half of that game. In the playoff game, it frustrated him. I think he had only 80 yards passing over the final 2 quarters. So he's going to need some development, but he has, a lot going for him in terms of the arm looks good, the accuracy, the feet need work, but he's a gamer. He seems to love football. His teammates like him. I know that teams told me that Oklahoma guys in the combine meetings were raving about him. So I think he has a lot going for him, but I think he's going to need some time to develop. I think playing him right away would be a mistake for whoever drafts him.
Yeah, he's a fascinating prospect for all the reasons you just mentioned, and he does strike you as the kind of guy that if he's on your team, you like him a lot, and if he's not, well, you don't think much of him, obviously, and I think that was his reputation throughout his college career.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think he's going to end up going, to maybe a better situation than some of the guys that go ahead of him, whether it's Darnold or Rosen. So, if he goes to a good team and he gets some time to develop, that could really end up being, a great situation for him to slide a little bit in the draft.
Couple quick ones for you, Charlie, before we let you go. We're talking to Charlie Campbell, WalterFootball.com. Biggest movers up and down the draft board since the Senior Bowl / in Combine, now that you got this information as well. What do we see here for the biggest movers and shakers?
Well, I think in terms of the defensive backs, I think Denzel Ward from Ohio State, I've heard a lot of teams that really like him. Wouldn't surprise me if he cracks the top 10. Arden Key, the LSU defensive end, a real wild card. Teams acknowledge that he is a rare and special speed rusher, but massive off-the-field concerns. So he's still in limbo right now. He could be a guy that ends up going high, or he could be someone that slides to day 2 like Randy Gregory or Tim Williams. So he's going to be a player that really needs to do well during these pre-draft visits.
Besides Arden Key, who you say is a wild card, who really just crushed their stock, and you can say Tavares McFadden because we saw that, but beyond somebody running slow, who has really done a poor job off the field since, the season ended and the Senior Bowl / Combine efforts, whether it be in the interview room or a combination of that and performance?
Well, yeah, I would say McFadden definitely has hurt himself with his workout. Orlando Brown hurt himself in the workout
Oklahoma
at the Combine.
tackle, yeah.
Yeah, he really struggled there. So those would be two guys that have hurt themselves. As far as otherwise, Mike Hughes, the cornerback from UCF, I know a lot of teams that really love him, but they have off-the-field concerns with him. So that's something he's going to have to help address here in these pre-draft visits, because that's a big question teams have, but they really like him as a player.
Charlie, in your interactions with pro scouts and player personnel guys, what have you learned of, and this is very specific to Tallahassee, what have you learned of Willie Taggart? And I think you've probably had interactions with him too, being down in Tampa and all that. What do you know of Willie Taggart from that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, the NFL community was really excited for Taggart when he got the Florida State job. I know a lot of scouts around the league that know him well, from scouting at Western Kentucky to seeing him at South Florida. And when the Florida job came open, mid-season when McElwain burned out and it was announced he wasn't coming back, a lot of scouts around the league thought Florida should go for Taggart. But they did preface it by saying that Florida State was his dream job, so they weren't sure if he would want to go to the rivals, but he would be great hire for Florida. And then when he landed at FSU, they were ecstatic for him and happy for the Florida State program, and think that he's going to do a tremendous job in terms of recruiting and just building a perennial winner there. So around the league, he's thought of extremely highly as a man, how he takes care of the players, his recruiting, his talent there, and then how they play and the way he has them ready to play each game. So the league definitely thinks that was a home run hire for Florida State.
Yeah, it's interesting, because Willie hasn't had a ton of big-time head coach experience, having been there at Western Kentucky and USF, not to belittle USF, and then just the 1 year with Oregon. But it's interesting to hear you say that they have immense respect for him, because he doesn't run, obviously, a system necessarily that is embraced by the NFL, but it's the man himself and the way he develops players. That's fascinating. And obviously, as a recruiter, they know Florida State will continue to provide NFL talent. So that's not going to change. They know where they can visit to find more guys. Charlie, it's always a pleasure. We'll do it again real soon, but your insight is greatly appreciated every year. WalterFootball.com, the website. Go see Charlie Campbell's latest mock draft. It's up right now. Charlie, be well, good sir. I'll talk to you again real soon.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Great talking with you, buddy.
All right. Be well, sir. That's Charlie Campbell, WalterFootball.com. Charlie it does his due diligence. That's all I can say. Look, nobody in that business, and that's a tough business, by the way, because a lot of people fancy themselves, draft experts and mock draft guys, and nobody gets it completely right, because it is an inexact science, and teams are in the habit of fibbing a little bit about what they might do or might not do, and players they love or don't love. But at the same time, the more you indoctrinate yourself with guys that are of the Senior Bowl variety that you can sit down with, that are with an organization and begin to trust you, that they'll talk and you don't burn, you can get better information. And Charlie's at least done that over the years, and you sense it and know it, and we learn a lot from him. I mean, he was the guy. Again, you bring it up a lot when we were going into the draft. What year was that? 2 years ago now?
That's 2 years ago, yeah, with Dak Prescott.
Yeah, Dak Prescott. He was all over saying, hey.
He said, listen, man, the scouts are saying that he goes to the whiteboard and he kills it. So that's something you might not expect given the offense he runs. And that's the thing. I feel like it's a broken record with the talking points with Charlie, but for, in all honesty, you only have him on a couple times a year, and we have a lot of new people year to year listening to the show.
That's why I address it like it's fresh each time.
Charlie always cites the sources. He doesn't just say, well, my grade, I'm looking at the film and here's what I say. No, he gets to a consensus based upon what he hears from people whose job it is to grade the film. And that's where his opinion comes from. It's not this own thing where he thinks and fancies himself as his own professional scout. Here's my big board. League executives will tell you this, but I think it's this.
Right.
No, here's what people are telling me
These
about.
10 guys have all said this about this guy.
Which is refreshing.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I also think what's interesting from that, because we can all decide what it is we can discern from that bit of information, as long as you have the information. So when you talk about wild cards, you can tell exactly where he got this from. It means that basically he's talked to, 5 to 10 different scouts, and they're split. So you'll get, 5 say, well, I really like him. I think he translates well, and there's a good chance that if he goes to the right system, he's going to be a star. And then I'll get another 5 that go, this ain't going to work out for him. He's got a lot to learn. He's going to have to go somewhere where he sits for 4 years or what, and then that's when you come to the table with, well, there's a difference of opinion on this guy. 5, a lot of people really like him. Some are not so sure.
Well, and that's one thing, NFL draft analyst or scout or fan like you and me, we all can tell that there are vast opinions and differences in opinions amongst NFL executives. Just look at the first round of the draft every single year, because there's 4 or 5 picks where you go, what in the world are they thinking?
Right. Well,
why would Team X do this?
Yeah, and I think what's getting more interesting, Tom, and if you like this subject, and we clearly do, if you don't, this bores you to tears, and you probably turned me off a while ago, so I'm not even addressing you. But what I will say is, if you like this process, one of the things you really like is it's getting more and more difficult at the quarterback position. It was, even go back just a few years to Jameis Winston, where we were adamant for a year and a half, probably number 1 pick, can't miss pro-style quarterback because he checks all the boxes. Now, if you got concerns about his character, fine, look into that, do what you got to do. But physically, and the offense he runs, and his ability to throw accurately, check size, all that stuff, check, right? And then it turned out to be true. It's not so simple anymore. You can't do that because, Deshaun Watson exists, and, Dak Prescott exists. Obviously, you can go back a few years, and maybe you don't make picks based on outliers. I got you, but they're no longer becoming consistent outliers. Russell Wilson is no longer an outlier. He's got friends, and so you start to see where, all right, if he does these other things extraordinarily well, I'll take a risk, even though he's lacking size or experience in a pro-style offense.
Sure, if Deshaun Watson continues what we saw flashes of, for a couple more years, where the league has enough film to figure out who he is.
Force him to do things he doesn't feel comfortable with.
And then he can counter what the league has done and still succeed. That's going to pave the way.
Well, it changes everything.
If Lamar Jackson succeeds at the NFL level and he's a consistent, you don't even have to be a top 10 quarterback. If you're an average NFL quarterback.
And yes, that's what you're doing. You're drafting a guy that can start for you, you can win games with. I mean, you have quarterbacks this past year that took their teams to the AFC and NFC championship games and the Super Bowl where you're going, well, I'm not talking about Tom Brady, but it's not like people were banging down the door for Nick Foles.
Correct. Yeah, and again, that's what the scheme does. And it's this is the first time in a while that we've had where the league is going to need to react to a scheme.
It's great.
You think about what Kansas City did to New England opening night of the season, right? Mm-hmm. And then flash forward from that point where they're running all these kinds of college concepts, motions and jets and reverses and all this kind of crap.
Eye candy.
Yeah. And then you get all the way to the Super Bowl and there's still more of it. And it's the one that hoists the trophy. I mean, New England does run some spread concepts.
They run a ton of them now.
There's no doubt about
used
that.
To, but
But the way Philly runs its offense, and that comes from what Andy Reid had been doing, which came from the college game. And it's the thing that wows you on opening night of this past year, and it's the thing that wows you
hoist the trophy
when Philly wins the Super Bowl. Okay, now you have something that enters the marketplace where defensive coordinators need to figure out, what do I do next? And that's going to create a whole new door open for defensive prospects and size, strength, and skill set of what you're looking for from your hybrid players like a Derwin James.
Yeah. One thing, though, that does remain the same, there are certain benchmarks and I guess a set of statistics that you want to see, whether they be measurables in terms of size, height, weight, those kinds of things, from your defensive linemen, your offensive linemen, your rush ends. A lot of that's not changing. If you're not checking the boxes on some of those things where you don't reveal an explosiveness and you don't have length, size, leverage, and ability to bend,
then
or feet, when you see that, you say, no.
But I feel like what's happening is, and maybe it doesn't. Maybe there's a correction to the market, so to speak. But I feel like the traditional linebacker is fading away.
Well, right, and you see it in college all the time, and Jimbo talked about it a lot here. It's why you could just be a nickel all the damn time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, you know.
But, I mean, a guy like Telvin Smith can be an all-pro player.
Right.
Derwin James can play up in the box, and you can call him whatever position you want. You know, at Florida State, it's star. You're the slot corner. Jalen Ramsey did the same thing at his size. But in the NFL, it won't be crazy to have a 220-pound defender that's basically playing linebacker for you. He's just a dead hybrid between two positions. And I think what the spread offense is going to do, if it continues to succeed at the NFL level, it's going to mandate that you get the 250-pound linebackers off the field. They can't play. They can't keep up to speed, especially if there's more than one of them on the field at the same time.
Before we come back to wrap up and transition over to Seminole headlines, congratulations to a couple of former Noles out there getting paid. My man Onions. Good on you, Graham Gano. Agreeing to terms on a 4-year deal worth $17 million. $9 million of that is guaranteed for Graham Gano and the Carolina Panthers. Good on him.
Avoided the franchise tag. They were going down to the wire with a kicker franchise tag.
I think it's pretty cool that, I have an Onions jersey and that I nicknamed him Onions, and he still occasionally goes by it, and people will go to camp and yell out Onions. That's pretty neat. And secondly, a super, super nice guy who's been grounded and hardworking and successful, and you love to see that rewarded. And then also another guy we both love, and you see him get franchise tagged, LaMarcus Joyner. His tag number sits at $11.29 million for 1 year of work. They decide to do that. They couldn't hammer out a multi-year deal, but he's going to get $11 million this year. That will work out just fine. A lot of people thought that was going to be Sammy Watkins that got tagged. Instead, they went and prioritized LaMarcus Joyner.
Tells you how much they think of him, right? They said,
when you can close like that guy can close, and you play with reckless abandon, and you're physical for your size, yeah, man. He's a football player. Jesse is what's his phrase used to say. I mean, and he's right.
I was hoping that they could solve the problem for us and pick Sammy Watkins. Tampa Bay could swoop in for one LaMarcus Joyner, and then you don't even need Minka Fitzpatrick.
Oh man, Well, listen, you and me.
I know where you're at now.
And I've been there. I've been reading so much about this guy. He's freaky, and so to me, it's Nelson. You don't draft anybody but Nelson. If he's on the board, you've got a franchise offensive lineman next 10 to 15 years, dominant at his position. That's what you do.
I'm beginning to suspect that neither of the two will be on the board at 7.
Well, me too. And then we're screwed.
Yep.
Because I don't want Chubb. So and he won't be there either because somebody else is going to take it. Here's what you have to hope. And this is entirely possible. Let's say Cleveland goes with some combination at 1 and 4 of Sam Darnold and obviously Barkley or somebody like that. All right, they could go Denzel Ward too. But anyhow,
they could go Minka too.
Well, okay. So they go some combination there, right? If let's say it's not Barkley. If they don't, Barkley may not be on the board. There's the talk that the Giants may take Barkley.
If Cleveland wouldn't take him first overall, which is, again, the game that they can play is, all these quarterbacks are about the same. Let's just take Saquon, and our 4th pick is really like a number 2 or a 3 pick.
If you aren't concerned about Rosen in the locker room, and I'm not, if you're not concerned about Rosen in the locker room, then you take him, to me, over the other guys.
Yeah.
But if you are, then obviously you'll look somewhere else and ask that.
I'm in that camp with you. The eye test says he makes throws that none of the other guys can.
Yeah, he's immensely talented. But let's say Barkley goes, and then the Colts decide to take Bradley Chubb, which they're rumored to be very interested in doing, and you guys go right on ahead. Denver's looking quarterback, obviously, still. There's a chance that they would take Rosen, if not Darnold, right? Now all you got to do is hope that the Jets don't screw you, and they're looking quarterback, too. So Josh Allen perhaps goes
Maybe they'll take Lamar Jackson. They're the Jets.
Yeah,
it's the Jets.
They just took him a few years back. It didn't work out. So, here you go. And now the Bucs fall into Quentin Nelson, and it would be outside of Saquon Barkley, which is, again, a running back. You get these guys in the 3rd and 4th round. Hey, man, the Bucs would have, in my mind, the best pick at 7 right there with Quentin Nelson. That would be the best pick that had been taken at that point. The most dominant projected player in the draft.
Enjoy that between now and draft night before Hopes are dashed.
Hey, man, last year we didn't think we had a chance in hell of any number of players, and all of them fell to us.
I know, yeah. Wow, there's 5 Alabama players left, and there's 4 picks remaining.
We're going to get one of these.
Yeah.
So, to me, God, just get me to Quentin Nelson. That's a home run. That's the only guy in the draft that you say,
oh my gosh,
cannot miss.
The nuptials have already been completed. You got eloped overnight.
No, but I didn't talk about this.
You were married to this guy.
There's nobody. Who do you want? Who do you want? Listen, you want a sure thing with your top 10 pick. He is a sure thing, barring injury. He's too big to get hurt anyhow.
Don't do that with Tampa. He'll slip on the tarmac, and that's the end of it.
Sweet Jesus. All right, we'll come back, wrap it up momentarily.
When you're in need of auto repairs, look no further than Nice Tire and Auto Service. Nice has been in business for 16 years with long-term, knowledgeable sales associates. They have the latest wheel balancing machine in the industry. And for passenger vehicles, they service AC, brakes, suspension, tune-ups, and much more. Never sit through a long wait. Nice Tire and Auto has 10 service bays to get you back on the road quickly. If you have tire problems, check out their large inventory with various Goodyear and Michelin tires. Nice Tire and Auto Service, 4792 Blountstown Highway, 574-4100.
TNT Supercenter is your one-stop shop for the largest inventory of golf carts and accessories, stocking over 150 new and pre-owned carts with prices starting under $2,000. Whether you're looking for a standard or custom golf cart, TNT has the perfect cart for you. TNT carries and services leading brands and the full line of premium Mad Jacks accessories. Stop by or call to find out about our zero-down, low-interest rate financing, free delivery, and rental programs. Visit TNTSupercenter.com.
TNT. I'm talking tough, like a state of mind. Tough, like a soldier on the front line. Tough when it gets rough, like my Ford truck. Always enough. I'm talking tough.
Franklin Spring Creek Ford, the place to find your next truck in southern Georgia.
I'm talking tough.
Hey y'all, we're Chris and Preston from Low Cash. Head to Franklin Spring Creek Ford and see them about all of your vehicle needs.
Sorry, boys, I did not have time to pack.
We got this.
It's right here, guys.
We got this.
I thought I could handle it.
We got this.
Moving doesn't have to be a hassle. Call us first at 2 Men and a Truck. No matter the move, home or business, we'll make it a smooth one.
I forgot something.
We got this.
Like to know more? Contact AmeriGas Propane right here in Tallahassee at 877-1122.
Need a place to watch your favorite sporting event? Hobbit American Grill, voted best wings in Tallahassee by Tally Awards 3 years in a row. They have daily lunch specials, all under $9. Happy hour drink specials and happy hour on Friday, 2 p.m. to close. Darts are now available on West Pensacola Street. Hobbit American Grill keeps it local with a wide variety of locally crafted beers, plus a full bar. Hobbit American Grill, 3 locations to choose from: 400 Capitol Circle Southeast, 2020 West Pensacola Street, and 5032 Capitol Circle Southwest. Visit them online at myhobbitonline.com.
O'Reilly. Pick up Peak Long Life Universal Pre-Mixed Antifreeze and Coolant for $8.99 a gallon after mail-in rebate at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Protect against damaging rust and corrosion with Peak Pre-Mixed Coolant, now $8.99 a gallon after mail-in rebate at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every day. Limit supply. See store for details.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Live from the AmeriGas Propane Studios in the capital city of Tallahassee, this is the Jeff Cameron Show on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
You to headlines momentarily. Should mention this while I was talking NFL draft before and combine and franchise tags and the like. Here you go, Jacksonville Jaguar fans. You have informed the receiver, Allen Robinson, that they will not be using the franchise tag or transition tag on him. Not going to happen.
Enjoy the open market.
Without the tag, the possibility of Robinson staying in Jacksonville shrinks rather significantly, as Tom just alluded to. The Jags now have a week to work out a deal with former Penn State receiver who has broken 1,000 yards receiving once in his 4-year career. It looked like he was destined for a lot more, but then again, he hasn't had a great quarterback.
That's correct. And, well, there's been health issues, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't he one of the several that got hurt last year?
Yeah, man, that 2015 season, he was great. 14 touchdowns, 1,400 yards. You're like, oh, destined to be a star.
Well, you think it's Robinson, Hearns, and Lee, and there you go, and you're on your way.
Yeah, but it's not really happening there. I would take a flyer. We don't need a receiver.
No, we're good, aren't we?
No, it just can't. He could be a fourth.
Well, if nobody's going to give him any money, then sure, go after him.
No, I'm
Evans, Godwin, and Deshaun Jackson with the old Humphreys. There you go.
I just don't trust Deshaun as far as I could throw him.
That's why I put Godwin number 2.
Yeah, you did. And you should, because he's reliable. He actually fights for the freaking ball.
Yes, he does.
And now you get a big guard in there, Tom, and we're blocking for Jameis.
He is the pleasant kind of #a-hole. I talked to him after the Minnesota game. And he said he was happy to get the extra reps because the Bucs were getting blown out, but he didn't like that the Bucs were getting blown out. But he also was really thankful that he got a lot of special teams reps. I was like, well, look at you.
Yeah,
you are saying the right things. You care about special teams reps. Nobody cares about special teams reps.
He's saying you do, which is the right thing.
Which is the right thing, which means you're not going to be a problem in the locker room.
Well, I got to do the right thing here. I'm indifferent about it, but maybe you guys will love it. So here's Brad Paisley tickets, 2 pairs for you, 523-3776, caller 2 and 3. You get a couple pairs of tickets. Well, 1 pair each, I should say, for whoever Brad Paisley is singing the songs that sound just like all the other country songs. But there you go. You got it. Brad Paisley tickets, 2 and 3. Lines 2 and 3.
And those songs shall be sung this Friday night at the TLC Double C.
8 o'clock. Good times for everybody who likes that. 523-3776. Make it happen now. Coming up, Seminole Headlines.